On a warm summer evening in Honolulu in 2001, the disappearance of 22-year-old Leilani Kealoha sent shockwaves through her family and the island community. Leilani, a vibrant and ambitious university student studying marine biology, had been preparing for a research trip to the Big Island when she vanished without a trace. Her family initially thought she might have gone hiking alone or stayed late at the university library. But as hours turned into days, worry turned into fear. The local police conducted initial searches, canvassing the area, questioning friends, and reviewing security footage from nearby streets and shops. Despite their efforts, there were no significant leads. The community rallied, posting flyers and sharing information at local markets and online forums. But as weeks passed, hope began to fade. Leilani's parents, Kimo and Maile Kealoha, were devastated. Kimo, a schoolteacher, and Maile, a nurse, felt powerless as the days turned into weeks and then months. Friends organized search parties along the coastlines, beaches, and popular hiking trails, while the university set up hotlines for tips. Local news outlets ran stories on her disappearance, keeping her face in the public eye and urging anyone with information to come forward. Despite the widespread attention, the investigation seemed to stall, with no suspects identified and no evidence pointing to her whereabouts. The Kealoha family began to fear the worst, yet they refused to stop hoping, holding on to the belief that someone would come forward or that new technology might one day provide answers. Over the following months, detectives pursued every possible lead. They spoke to classmates, co-workers, and acquaintances, trying to reconstruct her final movements. They examined phone records, financial transactions, and social interactions, searching for any unusual activity that might indicate foul play. They reviewed tips from the public, some of which were promising but ultimately led to dead ends. The investigation slowly became a cold case, one of the many files that lined the shelves of the Honolulu Police Department, gathering dust while families continued to wait for closure. As the years passed, the case haunted the Kealoha family. Holidays and birthdays served as painful reminders of Leilani's absence. Friends and neighbors continued to share memories and stories of her kindness, intelligence, and infectious laughter, emphasizing the tragic void her disappearance had left in the community. Kimo and Maile remained actively involved in local missing person initiatives, speaking at events and encouraging vigilance, hoping their advocacy might help prevent similar tragedies. Yet despite their efforts, the case remained unresolved, leaving a lingering tension in the hearts of those who knew and loved Leilani. In 2019, nearly 18 years after Leilani's disappearance, advances in forensic science offered new hope. Investigators reopened the case, reviewing preserved evidence and cross-referencing DNA samples with updated databases. Analysts meticulously examined items collected during the original investigation, including clothing, personal belongings, and trace samples from locations Leilani was known to frequent. Every detail was scrutinized, from fibers to fingerprints, with the hope that modern techniques could reveal information that had been unattainable in 2001. This renewed effort reflected the determination of the Honolulu Police Department to leave no stone unturned and to provide long overdue answers to the Kealoha family. During this renewed investigation, detectives discovered a critical DNA match from a distant relative, connecting it to a suspect previously unknown to the case. Genealogical research traced family connections and movements, providing a timeline that narrowed down possible locations and activities of the suspect. During the time of Leilani's disappearance, detectives combined this information with eyewitness accounts and historical records, gradually piecing together a picture that had remained elusive for nearly 2 decades. The meticulous work revealed patterns and connections that had previously been overlooked, breathing new life into a case once thought unsolvable. The breakthrough in the investigation stunned the Kealoha family. Kimo and Miley were both anxious and hopeful as detectives shared updates, revealing that their daughter's disappearance was not a mystery anymore. The news brought a mixture of emotions: relief that the case had advanced, sorrow for the years lost, and anticipation for the steps that would follow, including a potential arrest. Community members, many of whom had kept memories of Leilani alive over the years, also reacted with surprise and cautious optimism, eager to see justice served while reflecting on the long wait that had characterized the case. As detectives prepared to move forward, they meticulously gathered evidence to ensure a solid case. Forensic teams analyzed the DNA and corroborated it with witness statements, while investigators compiled detailed reports outlining the suspect's movements and possible motives. The goal was to create an airtight case that would withstand scrutiny in court, honoring the memory of Leilani and providing her family with definitive answers. Law enforcement officers emphasized the importance of patience and accuracy, knowing that after so many years, any misstep could undermine the credibility of the investigation and prolong the family's suffering. The arrest of the suspect, whose identity had been concealed until official charges were filed, shocked the island community. Residents who had known Leilani and her family expressed a mixture of disbelief and relief. Local media outlets reported the story extensively, highlighting the role of modern forensic technology and the unwavering dedication of detectives. The community reflected on the many years spent wondering what had happened, now realizing that persistence, combined with scientific advancement, had brought clarity. Kimo and Leilani Kealoha publicly acknowledged the police department's commitment, emphasizing that while the past could not be changed, the arrest represented a significant step toward justice. As the trial approached, the Kealoha family prepared themselves for the emotional challenges ahead. The prospect of testifying, recounting painful memories, and confronting the person responsible for Leilani's disappearance was daunting. Yet they understood the importance of participating in the legal process, hoping that their efforts would contribute to a conviction and affirm the truth about what had happened to their daughter. The community offered support, attending hearings and providing resources to help the family navigate the emotional toll of reliving events that had been buried for years. Throughout the legal proceedings, the details of the investigation and the evidence collected were presented clearly and systematically. Prosecutors outlined the DNA evidence, witness accounts, and timelines that connected the suspect to Leilani's disappearance. Defense attorneys scrutinized the methods used, challenging aspects of the investigation while maintaining the focus on procedural fairness. In the courtroom, the tension was palpable, with family members seated close together, holding hands and drawing strength from one another. The emotional weight of nearly 2 decades of uncertainty permeated every testimony and cross-examination, underscoring the significance of the moment for both the family and the community. The trial also brought renewed awareness to the challenges faced by missing person cases. Media coverage highlighted the importance of preserving evidence, utilizing modern forensic techniques, and maintaining engagement with families over long periods. Experts discussed how genealogical databases had become an invaluable tool in solving cold cases, bridging the gap between past investigations and present capabilities. The Kealoha case became an example of how persistence, technology, and community involvement could converge to solve a crime long considered unsolvable, providing hope for other families still searching for answers. As the trial unfolded, emotional testimony painted a vivid picture of Leilani's life and the impact of her absence. Friends spoke of her laughter, her curiosity, and her dreams of exploring marine ecosystems. Colleagues described her dedication to conservation and her desire to make a difference in the world. The courtroom became a space where memories of a vibrant young woman were honored, reminding all present that the case was not only about punishment, but also about acknowledging a life unjustly taken and the void left behind. Outside the courthouse, the community responded with support and reflection. Vigils and memorials were organized to honor Leilani's memory, reinforcing the importance of collective mourning and remembrance. Local schools and organizations initiated programs focusing on safety, awareness, and missing person prevention. The arrest and ongoing trial prompted conversations about vigilance, responsibility, and the ways in which communities could work together to protect vulnerable individuals. Residents recognized that while the past could not be undone, proactive measures could prevent future tragedies and foster a culture of care and accountability. The first part of the trial concluded with the prosecution presenting the bulk of its evidence, laying a foundation for the remainder of the proceedings. The Kealoha family continued to navigate their emotions, drawing support from friends, neighbors, and community members who had followed the case for years. Detective teams remained engaged, assisting prosecutors and ensuring that every detail was meticulously documented. The sense of anticipation was coupled with relief that, after nearly 20 years, Leilani's story was finally moving toward resolution, bringing clarity and the possibility of closure for her family and the wider community. Following the initial trial proceedings, the focus shifted to corroborating the evidence that had led to the suspect's arrest. Detectives revisited locations tied to Leilani's last known movements, examining areas that had been previously searched with limited results. They spoke with longtime residents, workers in nearby businesses, and hikers who frequented the trails she was known to explore. Some recollections were vague, while others provided unexpected insight. Witnesses remembered seeing unfamiliar vehicles, unusual behavior, and individuals asking questions about local trails in the days surrounding her disappearance. Each recollection, no matter how minor, was carefully documented, compared against time, and evaluated in the context of newly uncovered forensic evidence. During this renewed investigation, detectives also reviewed digital records that had become available over the years. Although Leilani's disappearance occurred in 2001, long before widespread social media usage, phone records, email correspondences, and university databases provided clues. Analysts reconstructed her communications in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, noting any irregularities, unanswered messages, or missed appointments. While none of these digital breadcrumbs offered immediate answers, they helped investigators build a detailed picture of her routine, social interactions, and potential risks she may have encountered. Every piece of information contributed to a larger puzzle that had eluded resolution for nearly 2 decades. The family, meanwhile, remained heavily involved in the case, participating in interviews, public appeals, and community outreach. Kimo and Leilani Kealoha became advocates for missing person awareness, emphasizing the importance of not giving up hope, no matter how much time had passed. They met with local organizations, law enforcement officials, and other families affected by long-term disappearances, sharing their experience to encourage persistence and support. Their story gained attention in local newspapers and news segments, highlighting both the challenges of long unsolved cases and the breakthroughs made possible by advances in forensic science and genealogy. As trial preparations continued, the prosecution focused on presenting a coherent narrative linking the suspect to the crime. The DNA match discovered through genealogical research was central, but it was only part of the story. Investigators also relied on physical evidence, witness accounts, and behavioral analysis to establish patterns and credibility. Each element reinforced the timeline, supporting the conclusion that the suspect had been involved in Leilani's disappearance. The meticulous documentation of past investigative steps, combined with the new evidence, underscored the thoroughness of the case, reflecting years of dedication from law enforcement and forensic teams. The arrest prompted significant reactions within the community. Friends, classmates, and neighbors who had grown up with Leilani expressed relief that the case was finally moving toward closure. Conversations in local markets, community centers, and online forums reflected a mixture of surprise, validation, and cautious optimism. Many residents had long assumed that the case would remain unsolved, a lingering mystery haunting the city. Now, with the suspect in custody, the possibility of justice felt tangible. While the emotions were complex, relief mingled with sorrow. The shared sentiment was clear. The persistence of investigators had finally provided answers. In the courtroom, testimony began to reveal the suspect's actions during the time surrounding Leilani's disappearance. Prosecutors carefully presented evidence, emphasizing patterns of behavior, movements corroborated by witnesses, and connections revealed through genealogy. Each detail was presented chronologically, allowing jurors to follow the events and understand the investigation's rationale. Defense attorneys questioned the methods used, highlighting potential gaps and inconsistencies, but the overwhelming weight of scientific evidence and corroborative witness accounts created a compelling case. Observers noted the contrast between the suspect's demeanor and the meticulous work of detectives and prosecutors, underscoring the dedication that had persisted for nearly 20 years. Outside the courtroom, the Kealoha family balanced their grief with cautious hope. The long-awaited answers did not erase the pain of losing Leilani, but they allowed the family to see progress after nearly 2 decades of uncertainty. Kimo and Mile leaned on each other and their extended family for support, attending hearings, coordinating with attorneys, and speaking publicly about the case. Friends and neighbors continued to rally around them, offering assistance, emotional support, and a sense of community solidarity. The arrest had reopened old wounds, but it also offered a path toward healing, emphasizing that justice, even delayed, could bring meaningful closure. Detectives also emphasized the importance of documenting the investigative process for future cases. The tools and methods that had brought the case to resolution, from DNA analysis to genealogical tracing, represented a new frontier in law enforcement. Training sessions and workshops highlighted the value of preserving evidence, maintaining meticulous records, and combining traditional detective work with modern technology. The Hawaii case became a model for other long-unsolved cases, demonstrating that even decades-old mysteries could be solved with persistence, innovation, and community cooperation. As the trial progressed, more witnesses came forward, providing crucial context. Colleagues from Leilani University described her ambitions and routines, highlighting her discipline, social interactions, and relationships with peers. Local business owners recounted unusual events or suspicious behavior they remembered from the early 2000s. Each testimony contributed to a layered understanding of the case, allowing jurors to see beyond the evidence and grasp the human impact of the crime. The cumulative effect created a compelling, emotionally resonant narrative that emphasized both the loss and the determination to seek justice. The courtroom atmosphere was often tense. Moments of silence were punctuated by testimony, cross-examinations, and the presentation of forensic results. Observers noted the emotional resilience of the Kealoha family, who sat attentively, holding hands and exchanging supportive glances. Their presence reinforced the gravity of the proceedings and the importance of every detail. Legal experts emphasized that the meticulous compilation of evidence, spanning nearly 2 decades, would likely be decisive, demonstrating how modern investigative techniques could bridge long gaps in unresolved cases. Community response outside the trial continued to reflect a mix of emotions. Local media provided ongoing coverage, revisiting the story of Leilani's disappearance and highlighting the role of forensic breakthroughs. Residents discussed the implications for public safety, community awareness, and the potential for resolving other cold cases. Schools organized educational sessions, using the case to teach students about the importance of vigilance, community support, and responsible reporting. Public discussions emphasized empathy and solidarity, reminding the community that behind every cold case was a human life and family affected profoundly. As the trial neared its conclusion, the final arguments presented a clear picture. Prosecutors synthesized forensic evidence, witness testimony, and investigative work, emphasizing the strength of the case and the credibility of the evidence. Defense attorneys focused on procedural questions, examining potential gaps or inconsistencies, but the comprehensive nature of the investigation and corroborated evidence left little room for doubt. The courtroom felt the weight of nearly 2 decades of anticipation, grief and hope converging in the present, highlighting the profound impact of delayed justice. The Kealoha family, while emotionally taxed, drew strength from one another. Each day in court reminded them of the resilience they had developed over the years, of the community support they had received, and of the unwavering commitment of the detectives who had never given up. Memories of Leilani's laughter, her dreams, and her kindness were recounted and celebrated, ensuring that her presence remained central to every discussion. The trial became more than a legal process. It was a tribute to her life, a recognition of the injustice she had endured, and a testament to the enduring pursuit of truth. Outside the courtroom, discussions about the evolution of forensic science became prominent. Experts explained how the Hawaii case illustrated the power of genealogical DNA testing in solving cold cases. Investigators emphasized the need to preserve samples, maintain accurate records, and collaborate with scientific teams. The case became a reference point for other law enforcement agencies, demonstrating the practical application of innovative techniques and the importance of perseverance. Community workshops highlighted these advancements, encouraging residents to understand and support the methods that had brought justice to Leilani's family. By the end of Part 2, the trial had firmly established the suspect's involvement in the crime. The evidence was compelling, the witnesses credible, and the investigative work thorough. For the Kealoha family, this phase represented both emotional exhaustion and cautious optimism. Nearly 20 years of uncertainty had brought them to a moment of accountability where the truth could finally be acknowledged. and the person responsible could be held to account. The community, too, began to see that long-held fears could be transformed into concrete action, fostering a sense of hope and collective resolution. The final weeks of the trial were intense. Jurors were presented with a culmination of nearly 2 decades of investigative work. Prosecutors meticulously walked them through each piece of evidence, connecting the suspect to Leilani's disappearance with a timeline supported by DNA, witness accounts, and documented movements. Every question asked in the courtroom was answered with detail and precision, leaving no ambiguity. Observers noted the care taken by detectives and prosecutors to present the facts without exaggeration, ensuring the jurors understood the gravity of the case while remaining focused on objective truth. The Kealoha family attended every session, their presence a silent testimony to the endurance of hope and the demand for justice that had never wavered since. Leilani vanished. Witnesses recounted events from the day of Leilani's disappearance, providing context that had been missing for years. A neighbor remembered a car parked unusually late. Another recalled a figure moving cautiously along the street. And a local store clerk described an encounter that, in hindsight, hinted at the suspect's involvement. Each recollection was carefully compared to existing evidence, building a chain of events that was both credible and convincing. Prosecutors emphasized these seemingly small details, demonstrating how each contributed to the larger understanding of the crime and underscoring the importance of thorough investigation and attentive observation. The courtroom also explored the human side of the tragedy. Friends spoke of Leilani's ambitions, her warm personality, and her dedication to her studies. They described her sense of adventure, her eagerness to help others, and her close connections with family and peers. These testimonies were not only personal but also vital in highlighting the impact of the loss, emphasizing that Leilani was more than a case file. She was a cherished daughter, sister, and friend. The Kealoha family often sat with tears quietly falling, balancing grief with the satisfaction of finally having their daughter's story told truthfully in a public forum. Experts in forensic science provided detailed explanations of the methods used to link the suspect to Leilani. DNA evidence, preserved carefully for years, had been analyzed using the latest genealogical techniques. Forensic specialists explained how partial matches, combined with public databases, led to identifying distant relatives, which in turn narrowed down potential suspects. These explanations, though technical, were communicated in accessible language, helping jurors and observers grasp the significance of scientific advances in resolving long-standing mysteries. The courtroom discussions emphasized that patience, methodical analysis, and innovation had finally brought clarity to a case that once seemed unsolvable. Defense attorneys attempted to challenge the evidence, questioning procedures, timelines, and interpretations. However, the prosecution's preparation and documentation countered these points effectively. Each potential gap was addressed with evidence of proper chain of custody, corroborating witness statements, and clear procedural adherence. Legal commentators observed that the case demonstrated the importance of both traditional detective work and modern science, showing how their combination could withstand scrutiny even decades later. The integrity of the investigative process was highlighted repeatedly, reinforcing public confidence in law enforcement and the judicial system. Community reaction to the trial remained intense. Local media covered proceedings daily, and public interest was high. Conversations in neighborhoods, markets, and schools frequently centered on the story of Leilani's disappearance and the long-awaited resolution. Many residents expressed relief that the case had moved forward, while others reflected on the power of persistence and the evolving tools available to investigators. Support groups for families of missing persons highlighted the case as an example of hope, showing that even after years of uncertainty, justice could be achieved. Public discussions emphasized empathy, vigilance, and the importance of reporting any unusual activity, demonstrating a community transformed by awareness and shared experience. The emotional toll on the Kealoha family was significant. Every day in court was a reminder of the years they had spent searching for answers, yet their strength was evident in their composed demeanor, in the way they supported each other, and in their willingness to face public attention. They recounted stories of Leilani's life, ensuring that her personality and achievements were remembered alongside the details of the crime. Their testimony, calm yet heartfelt, humanized the case and underscored why solving the mystery was essential not only for justice, but for the restoration of dignity and closure for a family who had endured almost 20 years of uncertainty as closing arguments began. The prosecution summarized the case with clarity and purpose. They outlined the meticulous investigation, the corroborated evidence, and the undeniable connection between the suspect and Leilani's disappearance. The narrative emphasized both the scientific breakthroughs that made resolution possible and the careful, persistent work of detectives who never stopped believing that justice could be served. The defense's closing focused on procedural questions and potential doubts, but the structured, comprehensive case presented by the prosecution left little room for alternative conclusions. Jurors listened attentively, weighing decades of evidence, testimonies, and scientific findings in anticipation of delivering a verdict. The final days of the trial were marked by tension, reflection, and anticipation. In the courtroom, observers noted the gravity of the moment, the cumulative weight of years of investigation, and the significance of each piece of evidence being scrutinized. Outside, community members gathered to follow updates, sharing their own experiences, memories, and support for the Kealoha family. Many expressed admiration for the diligence and dedication of law enforcement, as well as respect for the resilience of the family, who had never stopped seeking answers. The case had become more than a trial. It was a testament to persistence, innovation, and the enduring human desire for truth and justice. When the jury returned, the atmosphere was electric yet solemn. As the verdict was read, the Kealoha family felt a mixture of relief, sorrow, and validation. After nearly 2 decades, the legal acknowledgement of the suspect's responsibility provided a sense of closure. While it could not undo the years of loss or restore Leilani's life, it offered a concrete resolution, reinforcing the idea that persistence and patience could ultimately prevail. The community shared in the emotional weight of the moment, recognizing the power of justice delayed but not denied. In the aftermath, law enforcement agencies reflected on the lessons learned from the case. The successful integration of genealogical DNA testing, combined with traditional investigative techniques, set a precedent for future cold case investigations. Agencies emphasized the importance of preserving evidence, documenting every investigative step, and embracing new technologies. Workshops and conferences highlighted the Hawaii case as an example of effective collaboration, both within the police force and with the community, demonstrating that the combination of science, perseverance, and public cooperation could solve even the most challenging cases. The Kealoha family continued their work in advocacy, They participated in programs to raise awareness about missing persons, speaking publicly about the importance of never giving up and encouraging families in similar situations to keep hope alive. Their story became a touchstone for resilience, illustrating how dedication and community support could bridge even decades of uncertainty. Friends and neighbors joined in, helping organize events, memorials, and educational sessions, ensuring that Leilani's memory was honored while also contributing to the safety and awareness of the wider community. Months after the trial, reflections on the case emphasized both its human and procedural dimensions. Leilani's life, her disappearance, and the long journey to justice became a focal point for discussions on family, community, and the role of innovation in solving crimes. Law enforcement agencies documented the case extensively, sharing insights with national and international colleagues. The story of how a nearly 20-year-old disappearance could finally be resolved highlighted the evolving capacity of justice systems to respond effectively, even after prolonged periods of uncertainty. The Hawaii case also prompted discussions about support for victims' families, the importance of mental health resources, and the need for continuous investment in forensic research. Policymakers and community leaders noted that while justice had been achieved, the emotional and psychological consequences of unresolved cases were profound. Programs were established to provide counseling, guidance, and resources for families affected by long-term disappearances. The Kealoha family became active participants in these efforts, ensuring that their experience could benefit others facing similar challenges. By the conclusion of the trial and subsequent community reflection, the impact of solving Leilani's case was evident. The arrest, trial, and verdict had not only provided answers to a grieving family, but had also reinforced the value of persistence, scientific innovation, and meticulous investigation. The community, once haunted by uncertainty and unanswered questions, now had a model for hope and resolution. Leilani's story, while tragic, became a catalyst for positive change, inspiring others to pursue justice, maintain vigilance, and support one another in the face of adversity. Ultimately, the Hawaii 2001 cold case demonstrated that time, while challenging, does not prevent resolution. Through the combination of modern forensic science, careful investigation, and unwavering dedication from both law enforcement and the community, justice could be achieved. The Kealoha family, though forever changed by loss, could finally begin to find peace, knowing that their daughter's story had been heard, understood, and honored. The case stood as a testament to perseverance, collaboration, and the enduring belief that truth, even after decades, can prevail.